So, thank you everyone. Welcome to the third talk on our Awareness Life program. And this evening, we would love to welcome Mother Nikola and Sister Benedict. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be part of our program, our Lent program. Mother Nikola and Sister Benedict are from Minster Abbey, and Minster Abbey is a Benedictine community of women founded in 1937. Mother Nikola, she's originally from Germany, and her first contact with Minster Abbey when she was a teenager. Well done. She came to Minster Abbey for language holidays, and also she used to help sisters and enjoy their community and warm welcome as everyone experienced that. After 2 years of her medical studies, she felt that she had to explore a call to monastic life. And she joined the community at Minster Abbey in 1982. And Sister Benedict, after she left the school, she worked for 2 years with the disabled adults. Her plan was to train as a social worker. However, after a short time at the college, she felt a deep calling also for monastic life. And she joined also Minster Abbey in 1975. Mother Nikola, since she came to Minster Abbey, they have hosted many ecumenical conferences and more recently have been touched by the struggle of their Christian brothers and sisters in the Middle East. And Sister Benedict also was working on hospitality for many years. She welcomed residential guests and many day groups for about 20 years and more years to come, Sister Benedict. She was responsible for the formation of new members of the community. And also the life at the minister is nourished by prayer and the scriptures and our study and their study of the fathers of the church led to an interest in Orthodox theology. And the community has a deep engagement with the Christian brothers and sisters and ecumenical dialogue, and especially in the Middle East. We welcome you as you welcomed us before at Minster Abbey, and we had wonderful retreat, and we will never forget your hospitality and your warm welcome. In my name and the Awareness Foundation staff and trustees, we welcome you to join us, and we are now listening to you, and the platform is yours.
Thank you so much, Huda. It's really a great privilege and a real joy for us to be with you all tonight. And thank you and Nadim very much for your invitation. We told our Syrian friends in Germany about the Lent meeting tonight, and Naja thought she might be able to link up, we'll see. But we think especially tonight of our friends in Syria and the Christians of the Middle East generally, and all the people that the Awareness Foundation engages with and supports. And of course, you have found so many new ways of doing that during the pandemic and the lockdowns. When Sister Benedict and I were talking about what we might be talking about, we thought we would just take the title of our evening together from the title of a small book which has recently been published. You may have seen it, Let Us Dream. It's really a cooperation of, it says by Pope Francis. Well, he's had a ghostwriter, I suppose, in Austin Ivory, who has had conversations with the Holy Father, but also has excerpted from so many talks that Pope Francis has given, his thoughts. It's very topical in many ways, because of the pandemic has been the big trigger, really, but also the climate crisis is another big thing in it. Well, let us dream. It seems really necessary for us to dream at a time when so many dreams are being put on hold or are actually being shattered, when there is consistently hard news to listen to. And that is the pandemic, but also so many things to do with the ecological crisis, and then so many social tensions, war, violence. Just recently, places like China, Myanmar, Ethiopia, you can look almost in any part of the globe, and there are these really strident voices coming from all different quarters. And so perhaps to sort of say, let us dream, could sound unrealistic. But I think, well, definitely what the Holy Father by this means is not some, wishy-washy, woozy, cloudy, uncertain idea, wishful thinking. Somebody, I don't know who it is, but somebody said, and I can't do the proper American accent, but to the effect, you've got to have a dream. If you ain't got a dream, you're never going to have a dream come true. And I think a lot of what strikes us at the moment, that's the sort of thing we need to put against it. We do have to have, I don't mean as a sort of, in opposition, but something that enables us to engage with our reality. And our reality at this time is actually a very mixed reality. It comes to us in many ways. I mean, usually we've been talking about hospitality and welcome, in Huda mentioned that in her introduction. We would now be really, Sister Benedict's guest book would be filling up, beginning to sort of try to fit people around each other who want to visit and whom we want to welcome. Since last March, we have not been able to welcome people in that way at all. And we hope and pray that it won't be too long before we can engage face to face with people, but we've had to find other ways of doing that, of keeping in touch, of supporting people, of listening to people. For example, starting a separate email for prayer requests, but also for just getting in touch with people, email, letters, phone calls, Zoom, especially those who we know have to isolate or might be feeling isolated, in order to keep that hope going and alive, and to make people aware that we care, that there are people who care for them. So we do, we actually, I think it's built into us that we dream, that we hope. Otherwise, I think humanity would have folded a long time ago. We have this, as Christians, we know where it's coming from. As Christians, we believe that, we are in the image and likeness of God. So we're always reaching out. We're never we're not built to be closed in on ourselves, but we're actually hardwired to actually overcome isolation. I was trying to sort of reflect a little bit, what might our dreams be? And I think most people's dreams are actually quite concrete. They might be very simple, like, I hope to be able to welcome my friends and family, to give them a hug, to actually really see the people that we've not been seeing for a year. It could be other things. It could be, how am I going to keep my job? How am I going to support my family? Trying to find ways in which people can continue, not just hang on, but actually come through this difficult time and, rebuild their lives. But it's not going to be the old normal. And I think dreams are never about the old normal. They're about something new. In fact, they're not just something new normal, they're actually bigger than that. You know, they're wide open, they're open to possibilities, hopeful dreams. Let me just have a little look here at my piece of paper, because I know there's something here I wanted to say and I don't want to miss it here. When I was listening this afternoon to the World Service, there was a little program on the Holy Father's visit to Iraq. And a couple in Baghdad, a Christian couple in Baghdad, were briefly interviewed. A little snip was translated. And the husband said, it's very important for us that the Pope is coming, because every step of his journey from Rome to Baghdad, or I'm not actually sure whether he's going to go to Baghdad. Yes, he will. Every step of his journey from Rome to us shows that there are solutions for us. Yeah. I was very struck by that. You know, in a way you could say that's a very unrealistic expectation or hope or even dream. You know, what's the Holy Father going to say that's going to make things okay for Christians in Iraq? But it was said with such simple certainty that the fact that in this pandemic, the Pope is actually going through with a plan to visit Iraq under reduced and very difficult circumstances. This man just simply said it was important because it showed that there would be solutions. In other words, there is a future. There's going to be something different. We don't have to just accept that things are going to be as bad as they are. In the case of this couple, surely not just the pandemic, but, you know, persecution, the very hard day-to-day reality. And a little later in the program, again, I was very struck, the Archbishop of Erbil, I think, was being interviewed. And he was saying that during these few days, the Pope is going to visit, that's how he put it, the Grand Ayatollah, is it Ali al-Sistani, I think. And he said the importance of that meeting is hospitality. He said it's the, you know, to actually come all the way from Rome to visit the Ayatollah, as it were, shows the on the one side the wish to interact, but also to welcome somebody into your home. This is really where hospitality happens. And so to have this meeting arranged and to have this meeting happen is really, again, use the word, is part of the journey. I was quite struck that, you know, it's not just, it is vital for the Christians of Iraq, the Christians of the Middle East, but it is also vital for interfaith dialogue, for growing together so that we can actually build together and dream together. And then just sort of the other aspect I was trying to reflect on is what can I do? You know, what can each one of us do? What can one person do, or a small group of people do? And perhaps the first reaction would be, you know, that is really, it's unrealistic to expect something to change. There are a lot of good people out there. There are a lot of good intentions, but what could really change? And in this book, Pope Francis talks about how he came to realize the reality of the ecological crisis. And I won't kind of, you know, go through all the various steps, but what he says here is, through many encounters, dialogues, meeting people, anecdotes, my eyes were opened. It was like an awakening. Little by little, dawn breaks and you see the day. And he says, like daybreak, an ecological vision began growing. So it is each encounter that counts. It is each listening that counts. It's each story that is told and is received that actually counts. And so it brought me back to this, you know, from isolation to, if you like, to belonging. And one doesn't have to think, one has to think global. Yes, I think one has to think global, but one can act on a very, very sort of micro scale. Nothing is going to happen globally if we depend on global institutions. Something is going to happen, something is going to shift if there is a real engagement on a person-to-person level. And the word that I would use for it is belonging. So I suppose my dream would be from the isolation that's imposed by the lockdowns and the pandemic and so on, but also the isolation that is imposed by a sort of reduced idea of other people, or not having expectations of other people, not really expecting something to change, not really expecting something good to happen, not really expecting goodwill. To have small, tiny little shifts from that sort of isolated stance to connecting more and more, and really to become aware. I think you chose a terrific name for the foundation, the Awareness Foundation. And it's both becoming aware and making aware. But in the becoming aware, to really listen, not just the facts, but the tone of voice, to see the facial expression, to try to get the emotion that's involved in somebody telling their story, to get in touch with, what is really where people hurt, where people rejoice, to be aware of that, to share that, to be open oneself to do that, and then to make more and more people aware that there is a vision, that we can actually have a vision, a dream, a hope for dreaming together, and for this sense of belonging, and for not closing my eyes to reality, but actually keeping them wide open and taking in everything that's offered, to engage with it. And as a good Jesuit, the Pope would I think do the, you do your fact finding, you do your decision making, and then you do your acting. But it's not just a fact finding mission. It's getting in touch with one's own hopes and dreams and other people's hopes and dreams, and beginning to put all these into a network, and making the dream grow, and really give the whole thing a chance to engage more and more people. So that's, I think, how I would hope to dream.
I'd just like to thank you, Mother. It's, as Mother said, it's just wonderful to see you, and I can't wait till we see you again in the flesh, as it were. I'd just like to add a little bit to what Mother was saying, because last evening we had a meeting with the local, a parish in London actually. We got to know the parish priest some years ago, and we've kept in touch, and he asked if I would join them for one of their Lent meetings. And one of the ladies who spoke is a lady who has recently lost her husband. She's been married twice. Her first husband died of cancer some years ago. She married again. And then just a month ago, her second husband died. And he was in Cuba at the time. He went on a sort of missionary trip to help the Cuban people. And he himself caught COVID and died while he was there. And of course she was devastated. And she said she was so angry with God, and one can understand. She was full of anger. And she said what she did one day was go to see her daughter, who'd been very supportive. And she went for a walk with her granddaughter in the park. And I think I'm using this little story because I think it fits in with awareness. She could think only of her anger, her husband, and the terrible thing that happened to her. And when she went for a walk with her little granddaughter, for the first time, probably for that whole month, she saw the park and she saw something different. She saw the green. She felt her little granddaughter's hand. And they decided that we're going to count the daffodils. And so she said, we counted 24 daffodils. And that might seem very trivial and quite silly, really. But for her, that little task, that little act of love, in a way, that she experienced with her granddaughter, helped her to move on to the next step. And somehow I think she was able to begin the process of grieving, just counting 24 daffodils. And so I think it's that kind of awareness sometimes of the little things that can help us to move forward. And Lent is all about that, isn't it? Moving forward to the resurrection. And one of the things that we've been involved in is lambing, you may have heard. And we've got 10. Well, we will have 10 very soon. We've got 8 at the moment, and we've got twins on the way. But it's just beautiful to be there when a ewe is lambing. And I can really understand why Jesus chose the analogy of the Good Shepherd, and why we talk about the Lamb of God. Because the lamb is such a beautiful creature, and it's such a joy to be with these tiny little vulnerable lambs and just see them growing up and getting really excited and skipping around and dancing. And it's just a joy. It's such a joy. And these little things, I think, can help us to become aware of God's presence, but yet not to forget the suffering in the world. Sometimes I pick up a little lamb and I think, there are children in the world who don't get anything like the love and care and attention that these little lambs are getting. So we don't forget the suffering in the world when we enjoy life and enjoy nature. But still we have to find joy. And that's something that I've always picked up from Nadim and Huda. In spite of the terrible suffering that you know about, you can still smile and be joyful and be welcoming. And that for me is a wonderful sign of hope. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Mother Nikola and Sister Benedict. Mother Nikola, you said a lot of dreams are on hold, and especially with young people. And I believe the visit of the Pope to Iraq, I think he gave especially the young people a new hope. So what is the relationship between dream and hope as we live a changing and challenging life?
I think in many ways that's probably something very personal to each person, partly because everybody's life situation is so different. I think it's a great gift and privilege to have faith. I think if a person has not got the gift of faith, the struggle must be so much more difficult. I'm not saying that, we simply, as Christians, we simply say, we have, as Paul and everybody else would say, we know where our hope is and so forth, and everything's hunky-dory. I mean, it doesn't necessarily feel hunky-dory at all. But there is this underlying, there is a sort of substratum that our life is built on. And even in really difficult, challenging, complex situations, even desperate situations, like, the loss of a loved one, there is right inside that somehow the Christ is right there, and we don't feel it necessarily. But it's not just a head thing. It's not just, I believe and I'm sort of hanging on with my mind. It's a very deep reality. So that, I think, is where the hope and the dreams are anchored, and where they come from, and where they sort of keep springing from to get us through these challenging times. But I think even if you move a little bit away from this faith reality, just looking at people who are, frontline workers, whether it's medical staff and, carers, or whether it's people who empty our bins, that they go on. I'm sure the psychological pressure on nurses, for example, must be absolutely horrendous. We have quite a number of friends in medical nurses and so forth, and we have a hospice nurse, yes, who has a horse on our farm, so we see her every day, and really, okay, she has faith, but the strain is just absolutely unbelievable. But there is something in the human heart that actually does want to reach out, and just to see that, just to see people, carrying on caring, and stretching themselves to the limit just to be there for others. I think that is also something that generates hope and gives us, the courage to dream.
We have a question from Syria, from young Elsa. I think you met her at here in England a while ago. She said, "Thank you very much, sisters, for this amazing talk. As young people, how do we empower young people not to lose the power of a dream when reality is against dreaming?"
Yeah, I can really understand that, because we're older now, and we've had our life. We've had so much freedom, and when I think of what it was like when I was young and a teenager, and I used to hitchhike across America and that sort of thing, before I entered, obviously. But life was so simple. And when I get together with my friends, we just say, life was so simple in our days. There was no, there's not all these regulations and rules, and so I don't know. It must be very, very difficult, I think, for young people to have hope. And I suppose, as Mother was saying, we've got to find it within ourselves. And I know we do need, young people especially need role models. And I think that's really important. And I think that's something that the Awareness Foundation does very beautifully, especially in Syria. But if young people can find role models, people in their churches or their teachers who can maybe help them through this, but it is terribly difficult.
Huda, if I may,
Yes, please.
I think one of the really important things, and I love Pope Francis for this one very specially, I must say, is, we need to say to young people that they have gifts.
Yeah.
That each young person has an amazing, amazing gift. And I think this affirmation has to be constant, really, not because they're all doubting themselves, but because we know that, really, but we don't often say it, or maybe we don't say it often enough. And I think young people, the dreams of young people, I find inspiring. When young people have the courage to commit to each other in marriage, for example, when young people have projects they want to engage in, when young people, just to see young people together and the kind of incredible life and fun and talent and creativity that's right there. It is, as Sister Benedict was saying, it is in each person. But I think maybe sometimes young people, could hear it again from slightly older people or very much older people, that appreciation, but also that maybe a young person cannot see themselves that they have the gifts, but somebody else can see it. Somebody else can see that they have talents, that they have oomph for commitment, that they have creativity, all these kind of things, and to actually just say, do you realize you can do this, or have you realized that you've got a particular gift, or do you know what it means to me to actually see you so alive, that kind of thing. And I think that's what young people do with each other then as well.
I think there's a great challenge now, isn't there, with social media?
Absolutely.
And this kind of worries me that it's virtual, it's not real. And we didn't have that. But something that I think has always struck us, well, since we've got to know the Middle Eastern community, is that there's a lot more kind of openness and, well, you're very warm, friendly, tactile people. And sometimes, when we could welcome people, we'd have local kids from the school, and honestly, they just seemed to be all so depressed and kind of,
But you can't really.
And they just had to, die to get their earphones on again. And I don't know. I don't want to make blanket statements, but I think that the influence of the media is really eroding a lot of spontaneity and simplicity. I don't know how we get that back, but there must be a way, but I don't quite know how it might happen. But maybe again, there's just these little signs of hope everywhere, isn't there? And we just try to connect people. I mean, we do know some wonder. In fact, we were on a last week. We were on a, with the young guy that we spoke to, and from London, from the youth.
Oh yes. Yes. Three of us were doing a sort of presenting the saints of Minster, and also talking a little bit about our own stories. And
was he young?
Yeah, there was this young man who is working part-time for the diocese. Getting people to think about their life vocations, and
he was great.
He was amazing. He's about to get married in a couple of months, and
and quite a few young people came to that, didn't they?
Yes.
Quite a number of people.
You said wonderful things, that the young people, they need us to encourage them and listen to them. This is very important. Maria is asking, how much influence had the church in the West on peace in the Middle East?
How much influence of the church in the West have influence of peace? And I don't think people notice.
I just wish, there were about 200 organizations like the Awareness Foundation to make people aware. We have known for the last 25 years that there are vibrant Christian communities in the Middle East. Before that, I'm sorry to say, we didn't have much of a clue either. Of course, one knew about the Greek Orthodox Church and some of the other Eastern Rite churches and so forth, but the fact that the Middle East is the Christian homeland is sort of almost historic, back then, 2,000 years ago. And I think we could do with a lot more. I do know that some of the bishops, and not just in this country, there are some who have a particular interest. I wonder how much you have to have more of a visibility before it can actually have an impact. I think it's important, though. We've had, I'm not sure whether we shared this with you, but about 3-4 years ago, we had a series of meetings here of local people from the Middle East, but also, a bishop, an MP, an assortment of people, and just to kind of get the level of consciousness raised a little bit. That is still a far way, I think, from a long way away from actually perhaps then making a difference in the Middle East. But if we can start here, making connections with Christians from the Middle East, my hope would be, that there will be a knock-on effect. I mean, it certainly has worked like that for us. It's just, the situation of the Christians in Syria, for example, or in Egypt, to me is as real as any Christian community in England. And the prayer, if you like, that I feel I want to invest in that, and talking to other people about it, I think it's a good beginning. But certainly in terms of the churches in the West and the, say, like the political situation in many countries where, you know, things are built into the system that kind of make the persecution of Christians an everyday occasion. I think we're not doing enough about it. I think the Pope is very outspoken about it.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. But
I think we belong to a little group. I mean, in the village of Salvation Army, Anglican and Catholics. You know, we have Christians together. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do much since the pandemic, but we still meet online. And one of the projects of the Salvation Army is to bring a refugee family to Minster. The Salvation Army own a little bungalow in the village, and then they want to give it over to a refugee family. Now, we think they're going to be from Syria, and because they're going to be from a camp, we think they probably won't be Christian. But nevertheless, you know, if we can bring a little family to Minster, it would be just lovely, and we're looking forward to it. But when the captains of the Salvation Army told the congregation, there was a kind of mixed feeling. And, you know, they were saying, well, you know, so many homeless people in Thanet, which is true. But the leader, the lady captain, said, yes, but there's we can do this and that. You know, we can help the homeless and we can help a refugee family. And I think that's something that we need to promote. You know, it's not about either or, it's about both. And I think we've experienced that a bit, you know, since coming in contact with Christians from the Middle East. You know, we have our own Christian community in England, but there's also other Christian communities, not just in the Middle East, but throughout the world, of course, that we need to connect with in order to, I think it's what the Pope said, Pope John Paul II said, you know, we're only working on one lung. You know, when the church is divided, we're not breathing properly, you know, and we need to have two lungs to breathe with. And whenever I have contact with other Christians, and especially I think Christians from the Middle East, I feel, yeah, you're kind of breathing a bit better. We need to breathe.
There is a question from Richard saying, sometimes our dreams are vastly exceeded. Other times they are not dashed and not met at all. It is difficult to understand why.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that's very true. That is just very true. I just think, you know, in recent months, we've been asked to hold many people in prayer. And sometimes you hear a few weeks later that, you know, my mum bounced back from COVID. It's a long journey, but she has turned a corner and she's going to be all right. And then just recently, a priest asked us to pray for his cousin who died a week later. And why? You know, why?
And it's true, I think that sometimes our dreams are, you know, like prayer sometimes is answered far more than we would ever have thought. Yes. And other times you think God isn't listening at all. It's all a mystery. We used to have a priest, he's gone to heaven now, but whenever he would give a homily, he nearly always said, and it's all very mysterious. And, you know, there's so much that we just can't understand, we'll never understand. And we just have to hold the mystery and be in the mystery of Christ.
Absolutely. There is from Tom a question. Don't we all have dreams, and aren't they underpinned by the security of the hope given to us by Christ. And so isn't it incumbent on all of us to communicate that hope to everyone, especially young people?
Yes. 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 Mm-hmm.
Would you say a bit about your family, the little ones?
My sister's just saying, would I say something about my nephews and niece? My youngest brother has got 7 kids, ranging in age from about 16 to 1.5. And yeah, I think, you know, it is lovely when in a family context you have the faith handed on very naturally. I remember the 2 eldest, they were about, I think they were about 4 and 6 at the time. And one of them was saying, when you ask God for something, how does it get there? How does it actually get? I know, you know, sort of God is up there, we all know that, but how does it get there? And the other one said to him, you know, it's like a fax machine. That was back when we had fax machines. You say, you know, dear God, and then you say your prayer, and then you push the button and floop, it goes to God. And the other one was perfectly happy with that notion of you know, how prayer works. But I think for every age, a different kind of understanding. But I think in the family context is one of the most beautiful settings for handing on the faith. In the parish, in youth groups, in work with young people, I absolutely agree that, you know, that gift is given to be shared. It's not just, you know, hugging it to myself. You can't be a Christian by yourself. It's just impossible. You just, you know, as a Christian, you are for. You just have something. There's something I want to share. There's something I want to hand on.
Absolutely, Mother Nikola, that our dreams, we have to share it with others. And this is the fruit of our life, how we engage with the other.
Yes.
Philip, can you unmute yourself? He would like to say something.
Yes, hello. Hello, sisters. I'm Philip Gray. I'm in Northumberland, so a long way away from you. But Sister Nicola, we have met before a few years ago. I loved your comment about you have to have a dream for a dream to come true. They were the lines by Reverend Ian Bradley, a Presbyterian minister, who wrote a book exploring the spiritual dimension of musical theatre. And that's how it became a famous line. When I was a child, I was taught to dream. At the Sabbath school, at the shul, we were taught to dream. Nothing happens unless you dream. I did say to a well-known Syrian lady once that your English will improve when you dream in English.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah.
She's laughing now.
I'm telling now my sister
Yeah,
the same.
but we have lost some of the old skills that went with storytelling. The time we took a book to our children's bed and made the sound of the animals and painted a picture in words. We've lost these gifts and skills of empowering the power of dream. And people who don't dream become two-dimensional. They probably keep on putting the earphones back in to the sound to camouflage their flatness. But dreaming is something that we should do. Nadim did a series, and I'll get the Arab pronunciation wrong, so you can laugh at me, Huda. Al Hakawati,
Yeah,
the storyteller.
storyteller.
And that's what we've lost. If we want people to dream and have hope and to see their dreams come true, we need to tell the story. I I told the story of a dream in Kenya, and it's still coming true 20 years later in more and more different ways. The question is, how do we get back to being storytellers and dream talkers? Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. We were talking before, Philip, Mother Nikola and Sister Benedict, about to share my dream. So in divided society and even divided world, how can we share the dream and work together to fulfill it? Especially this time.
Was that a question for me, Huda, or the sister?
No, for Mother Nikola and Sister
Okay.
Benedict.
I think one of the things that, you know, for me, something perhaps applies in a situation like that we've been discovering in ecumenical dialogue, that we focus very much on the things that unite us rather than the things that divide us. And in terms of dreams, I think there's something similar. I mean, people may have very strong, ideals and dreams and hopes that they want to see realized, but quite often there is an area where things overlap. The first thing I think is to actually talk to each other about our dreams. It doesn't necessarily happen very often, I don't think. It's difficult to imagine a situation sort of spontaneously where some people sit down and say, let's share our dreams. And I think it's very true what Philip says. If we have more of a culture of telling tales and telling stories and telling dreams, then there is more of a chance to actually know, to find out what we aim for, what we might be working together on. And but I think one can consciously begin to do a little more of that, to invite people, to talk of their fears and their dreams, and to listen to their fears and their dreams, and then share a little oneself as well. I mean, I'm sure everybody who has to give homilies will know that, when you start saying something personal, suddenly the little rustlings in the congregation stop and people are really listening. So this sharing of something about myself invites sharing on the part of the other person. And I think that kind of culture is part of then working together on our dreams.
We need to give the young, especially the young people, a platform.
Yes.
To talk about their dream and encourage them to fulfill their dream.
Mm-hmm. Which is really the work of your foundation is essentially that, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. This is what we are trying to encourage young people to fulfill their dream and to dream more.
Yes.
Even sometimes I say, dream something you cannot imagine one day you will have it. Just dream. Without a dream, you cannot be a human.
Yeah.
A dream as much as you can, because you don't know when God will listen to your dream and make it true.
Yes.
No comment.
Oh, goodness. goodness.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
Well done.
Yeah, that's really wonderful.
If anyone would like to unmute and say something, please feel free to do that.
It'd be nice to hear from others.
Yes, absolutely.
Very quiet.
In the silence, may I tell a story?
Okay.
We had a very serious rabbi, and when he came in and took Sabbath school, he talked about our relationship with God. And he said it's a bit like this. Adam walked up to the riverbank where Eve was, and Eve threw a stone in the water and it skipped 15 times. Adam says, "Go, I know who taught you that." Just then God came along and threw a stone, and it skipped 40 times, and every time it skipped, a fish jumped out of the water and did a somersault. Laughing, Adam pushed God into the water, who came up on his back, spraying water in a fine spout out of his mouth. Then he laughed and he says, "That gives me an idea for another animal." You see, you've got it. It's made God dreamable, and that's what we'll see in the church today, making God dreamable.
A friend from Germany, Syrian, Najah, is saying, we stop dreaming when we stop trusting the future. Then we lost the luxury of dreaming.
Oh, it's nice.
Lovely. It's lovely to hear from her.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Najah.
Thank you, Nasha.
Can I just read you one verse of poetry as we're talking about dreams?
Yes, definitely.
I don't know whether perhaps people have come across this. It's at the end of this book by Pope Francis, and he says it was sent to him by a friend, and he couldn't quite work out where it came from, but it had already gone viral. The author is called Alexis Valdez, who is a Cuban actor and works as a comedian in Miami. The poem is called Hope, but just the last verse. It's a pandemic poem, basically. When the storm passes, I ask you, Lord, that you return us better as you once dreamed us.
That's lovely.
Just what Philip was saying there, New story.
And also when Bob said about the women ministry now, and also he had this dream. So if we don't dream, we don't achieve any new things.
Yes.
So we have to think and listen and observe around us. Then we can build our dream to be true. And we hope one day to see, ordained women in the Catholic Church.
But at the moment, we have to say dream on.
Absolutely. If you don't dream, you may not, have it. So dream as much as you can.
Thank you.
Yeah. Something I remember that Nasha told me when she came from Aleppo with her 4 children, and they were refugees. They live in Germany now. So I'm hearing from Nasha from Germany. But I'll never forget what she told me once when their first Christmas in Germany, and she asked one of her little boys what he would like for Christmas. And he said, "Nothing, Mummy, just take my memories away." And, you know, I just thought that was so sad that some children who've been brought up in these trauma situations, war situations, they've got these terrible memories. And so I suppose a part of dreaming for the future is to somehow heal the memory. And I think that's what your foundation is about too, isn't it? Trying to heal, you know, memory. And that must be a very difficult thing for people who've been in trauma situations to be healed of their memories.
And this is what really each one of us has the duty to support children and young people. To be honest, not just in the Middle East, now even in the West, especially after the pandemic. A lot of young people, they trapped in at home, and they couldn't go out to play or to talk with their friends. So a lot of dream. We need now, I think, more dream than before.
Yeah, you're so right. And one of the things that we're going to do now is adjust our guest house as a result of all this to try and welcome people more on self-catering retreats, so they can just be freer and a bit more self-sufficient, because I think people just need to get away and maybe not have the structure so much of the guest house as it's always been. You know, we'll have the structure of the guest house at some time out of the year, but I think just have people who can just come and relax and kind of just be would be one of our dreams. Yeah.
So how can we more dream to be a power of change? So we feel like dream is really the foundation of changes. How can we? Yeah.
You know, dreaming is not a dreamy activity. It's a very solid kind of thing, because it is, you know, it's a power that changes things. So I think you mentioned the word reality. You know, it's not dreams versus reality. It's infusing the dream into the reality rather than live in a sort of virtual reality, either pretending, you know, it's all going to be over and everything will be as it was, or you know, pretending that some of the dreadful things haven't happened, or, you know, pretending that I can make myself busy with something else if I can't see my friends face to face. So a dream in that sense, I think, is it's a bit like it's a bit like many of the sort of disciplines of every religion, I suppose, really, to try and come to a very honest assessment of myself, of the situation, you know, of reality. Because if it's just unreal, nothing can change. If we make up stories that are just stories, then nothing can change. If we tell ourselves everything is fine, if, you know, if politicians just cover things over, it's in every sphere. If in the church we don't look reality in the face, if we don't actually, if we're not clear what we want, and if we're not clear about our mistakes, again, nothing can happen. So I think a lot of what's happening globally is really, it's a challenge, yes, but I would like to think it's an invitation to look at things again. A few weeks ago, somebody rang, and I think his worldview is probably more Buddhist. I don't think he's really, you know, he was brought up, I think, in a Christian context, but I think it's sort of meditation and that sort of more in a Buddhist sense. And he said, "Why do you think this pandemic happened?" And I just waited because I thought he would have an answer. And he said, "We've been thinking it must be because we messed up so much." And I just you know, we had a good conversation, and I can't really remember now but my initial instinct was to sort of say, no, you know, it's not a punishment.
No.
It's not God sort of saying, you really messed up and now you're going to get it in the neck for it. I think if there's one thing I believe about God is that he's not like that.
God is love.
Yes.
And the essence of God is love.
Yeah.
And when we love, we don't destroy the other.
So I think, oh yeah, I do remember, I said to him, I think it's a wake-up call.
Yes.
I don't know if it's a
Absolutely.
wake-up call. And so we talked about that, and he so, you know, he said, oh yeah, it's an interesting way of thinking about it. Because yes, if it doesn't wake us up, what will? But on the other hand, I simply couldn't accept that this is a God-given punishment. It's all in God's plan. I do accept that, of course, but you know, not as a punishment of humanity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mother Nikola and Sister Benedict. Would you like to say anything for the foundation and to the people in the Middle East or who are listening, watching? Would you like to say anything? Because our time is over now. We would love to hear more, but unfortunately the time is limited.
Maybe just to send you all our love and prayer, and you're always in our hearts. We're always thinking of you. We hardly ever have intercessions without thinking of our friends in the Middle East, and we're just so grateful that we met you and got to.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I will encourage everyone to go for a retreat
Yes.
at Minster Abbey to fill and to be, you know, enrich spiritually and mentally and whatever. It's an amazing place to be. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.